Good morning.
Morning.
How are ya? Happy Monday.
Oh geez, what did I do? There you are.
I don't know. I don't know. What did you do? Well, it is Monday. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Mindset Monday, where independent patient advocates like us hang out for some positivity and inspiration to start our week. My name's Nicole Broadhurst, and I'm here with my co host, Kayla Thompson Riviere. Today, we're focusing on empathy, and we have a really good quote to get us through this new week of advocacy. So, why don't we dive in and get inspired? What is our quote this morning? Do you have it over there, or do you need me to do it?
I have it, and you put it in the thing, so we're
That's
good.
right. It is. It's right
Yeah.
underneath us.
So our quote for us this week comes from Mr. Stephen Covey. Once again, I haven't looked up the person ahead of time. I need to start doing that. But anyways, at any rate, moving right along. The quote is: "Seek first to understand, then to be understood."
I love this. I really do. I
Yeah.
cannot. I'm trying to form some words. So, what are your first thoughts about it, Kayla?
Well, truth be told, my very first thought about it is it reminds me of this conversation that we keep having with our son. Again, my son coming up in Mindset Monday. Um, but we've been really working with him lately with the concept of you have one mouth and two ears. So you need to listen twice as much as you're speaking. Because he's almost 5, so he's at that age of, well, there doesn't seem to be a pause button here at all. And we struggle to get him to listen.
Ooh, I think that's I'm not convinced that that's limited to 5-year-olds, Kayla.
Yeah. It certainly is not. Of course, the hope is that we're putting more emphasis on it now so that it will, come a little more naturally as he gets older.
There you go. There you go.
But
I,
yeah, not
I
everybody was raised with that level of awareness and intentionality. Um,
love it.
so there's a lot of people that, yeah, still haven't got that message and still need to be reminded, even the ones who got the message. That's why we're here.
That's right. That's why we do this, because I think it's really easy for us collectively, people, humans, all of us, right? To be in a place of I've got to get over there, like I've got to be there, and because I'm trying to progress and make and get over there, sometimes I forget to slow down,
Mm-hmm.
and I jump over a lot of things that are super important, especially in the work that we do as advocates, right? um this quote, this idea always brings me back to the why we're doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why we got into advocacy. And the truth is that patients, and that includes us, because we will be patients, we are patients, right, regularly, um, are not, the system is not designed to slow down and listen to patients. And
Mm-hmm.
so the whole reason that independent and professional advocacy and the work that we're doing exists is because patients need that ability to slow down and use some strategic tactics to be seen and heard and all of the things. And so if we as advocates aren't focused with intentionality on this piece of our work, we really aren't providing any benefit that the current system doesn't provide.
Yeah, I actually, so oftentimes I find our quotes to be most applicable to us and ourselves in this work. However, I think in particular with today's, it's actually in my opinion, more applicable to the clients we serve. Because one thing that I have noticed through my business journey is that a lot of people who come to me, clients, to be clients, there is a lack of understanding about their entire situation. Oftentimes, not just on their part, but also the clinicians that are involved. There's a lack of a big picture, broad understanding. And that's one of the gifts that I bring to my clients with my clinical background, is that I have the knowledge, the tools, and the communication skills to break down their situation to a level where they can understand it all. And then we can start to figure out what pieces need to get moved around, then and only then. And that level of pause and deeply understand, you're right, is incredibly lacking in the way the healthcare system is structured as it is. But it's so vital. I mean, if nobody is looking at the big picture, then we're really just shooting spaghetti at the wall and, seeing what works. And works isn't even a great word, because a lot of times the spaghetti we're shooting is a for treating symptoms and not getting to the root cause. So there's a lot of problems with that strategy.
So true. So I'm just going to preface this. Some reason they've started doing lawn work on Monday mornings. So you will notice that I will be muting myself in and out to prevent some, really loud noises over here. I apologize for that. Nobody asked me when they could
Nobody
mow
asked
outside my
you.
lawn. No,
Yeah, that's
no, no.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Right before my baby was born, they changed our trash pickup. It used to be at like 11 a.m. and they changed it to about 4:45. And
Ooh.
yeah, and the trash truck wakes up the dog, and the dog's like, somebody's coming, and yeah, it's a whole thing.
Right?
And I was like,
I
I'm
know,
about to
yeah.
have this baby, and now.
I know. Practice of resilience and adaptability. I'm working on it. I'm working on
Yeah.
it. I'm working on it. So I agree with you, Kayla. This is the crux of why we do our work, why we are needed. I agree with you. This is one area where it's always important personally, but I agree that there's this additional layer of how we can take this from being just personal and applying it in our business. And I'll tell you, I really believe in the core of who I am, I believe that this practice is probably the single most important thing that has allowed me to grow my practice. And
Yeah, that
because
makes sense.
this is, right? Because this is the thing that creates a true, authentic connection between human beings.
Mm.
And that
Mhm.
is an absolute must when we are serving people in such a vulnerable state and in this particular area, right? When we give them a safe space where they know they can be heard, seen, and understood, and that we have their best interest at heart, it is a powerhouse for developing client relationships. And we talk about creating clients for life a lot. Again, this is the foundation for that, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's super powerful, and it is sometimes challenging, right?
Yeah, well, we as humans have an innate need, not just a wanting, but a need to be understood and feel connected and safe and secure and all of those things with the people around us. Um, so oftentimes we want to jump straight to being understood, and that can come out rather inappropriately. The ego we've talked about, the ego brain just kind of takes over the
Right.
room, says and does what it wants. But yeah, there's immense value in that pause and listen first, and let that direct the way in which you then move forward in being understood. It's like, you got to read the room before you stand
Right.
up and start shouting. Like, I think we
Know
all
your
can
audience.
relate that when we go network and do different events and stuff, like you talk about yourself and your business in slightly different ways depending on the audience that you're with. I give a different version of what I do when I'm connecting with other advocates versus other professionals versus the mom at the class next to me that my kid goes to. Um, but that all starts with a level of understanding where the other people around me are at to then tailor my approach.
Yeah. I love this. I spent some time really kind of breaking this down, and you know me, I'm always about three things. I wish I need to
Rule
do
of
some.
three.
If listen, if anybody does any research or likes to do that, I would be super interested to like learn more about the science behind the power of three. I just can't believe that there isn't. I think there is, and I just don't know it yet. So if you have a book or a science study or something like that, DM me, let me know. I would love to read it. Anyway, because I just keep being drawn to this. So I came up with this three-step process of how I implement this very quote, specifically in my advocacy business. But like I said, it can be tweaked in any relationship, right? And the very first step of implementing this is remembering that validation is key.
Yeah.
Right? The very first step is so my job when I enter into, and lots of people, you may be listening, and we just had a connection call, and you may remember the very first time we spoke that I started the call with something like, hey, this is what's going on. I would love to hear more about you, how you got into advocacy, why you're where you are, and what your biggest challenge is. Literally turning the floor over to you to tell me all about your story. Why? Because step number one is validation. I need to hear who you are. I need to hear your story. I need to know all about you in order to validate you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step. So remember that. Remember, slow down. The very first thing, that's the most important thing we can do is to validate the person in front of us. Right. And then the second thing that we can do is understand that when we do that, when we validate other people, they feel seen and they feel heard, they feel important. And it allows us to build trust with them, which in turn increases our influence with them. Now we validated them. Now that we've brought them closer to us, now we can have a real conversation, and the things that we say will have more influence on them. Why? Because they have a connection with us, and we became
Mm-hmm.
important with them.
It's like thinking about a relationship like a bank account. Like you have to deposit before you can withdraw. When you're asking something of somebody, that is a withdrawal. Depositing it can be a little bit more tricky, but it is as simple. It can be as simple as listening and validating. Taking it back to our work with clients for a minute, that is hugely impactful. I mean, oftentimes, I can't speak for everybody, but in my world, nobody comes to me because things are going right, right? Like,
I think that's
something,
pretty universal. Yeah.
I mean, I think so. Something is going wrong. And oftentimes, one of the biggest complaints that people have with regard to the healthcare system is that they feel like nobody is listening to them. It's part of the
Mhm.
reason my business is called Heard for Life. People just want to be heard, and just giving them that space, and really, and this isn't, to be clear, this isn't just, oh, I'm going to give them 2 minutes and nod my head. No, this is really listening, so that, and I take notes so that, and I think that helps because they actually see that I am intensely paying attention to what they're saying. And oftentimes I've gotten the feedback that, like, wow, you're the first person to really listen to me, or even bigger than that, you're the first person that seems like they care. Or I finally have hope that I have somebody on my side. And I hear those things before I've even done anything. It's just in
Right?
that like
Yes.
investigation phase.
Yes. Yes.
I
I think,
also
yeah.
heard I've also heard from a marketer, like with regards to networking and relationship building in that manner, that whenever you have a conversation or one-on-one with somebody,
Mhm.
you always want to be a TED and not a ting. You want to
Hmm.
be interested, not interesting. So
Interesting.
you're listening more
Yes.
than you're talking.
Yes.
And it's interesting because, I believe it's Maya Angelou has the quote that people don't remember what you say, but they remember the way that you made them feel. And people will walk away from that conversation like, oh, Nicole was so great and so amazing.
Yes.
And Nicole didn't tell you
Yep.
anything about Nicole. She just sat there and really listened to you and intently got to know you.
Right? It's so true. I mean, it is true. And if you haven't experienced this, I think a lot of us have experienced, we just don't know how to harness that. Right? Like, okay, that's great. But what does that mean? And that's a whole nother conversation. So go watch some of the previous videos on relationship marketing and how to
Mm-hmm.
leverage those relationships, because I think that this is where it starts. This is absolutely, um, I think I'm pretty sure Jason Elkins says it's 70-30. Like the first time you connect with someone, you should be listening 70% of the time and talking 30% of the time. And it's
Mm.
for this very reason, because we're human beings and we love to talk about ourselves. I mean, we just do. And so when we are able to be quiet and listen and do that intense, you know, getting to know somebody, it brings that relationship, like you said, it solidifies it, right? It just makes that connection even more, even stronger. So, and which in turn, like I said, gives us this opportunity to, build influence and trust, which again is like the second step into this this relationship. And then the third part is when we do this, Kayla, when we do this stuff, the last thing is we're able to provide more effective advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
The outcomes of our work will be better. Why? Because we are intensely aware of our clients' desires, their
Mm-hmm.
wants, their needs, the things that they will determine, because we talk about this a lot, right? Success is defined differently for all of us based on different circumstances and situations, which means in order for me to successfully advocate for my client, I need to know how they define success,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right?
And
And
that's
this
not,
will allow me to do that.
yeah. And it's typically not something that, like, you can't get that information from like having them fill out a form or a questionnaire. Like, it's stuff that comes up in conversation and not just with them describing the like concrete parts of the problem, but in
Right.
the language that they use to describe it, you can really get a
Yes.
sense of where they stand with things and where their biggest pain points and frustrations are, oftentimes more than they're aware of it, because they're so in it. Like, I don't know
Yes.
if you've had this experience, but when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to even figure out for yourself what the
Right.
biggest issue is, or where you can have help. I always think about it from the experience, because a lot of people can relate to this, of being a mom with a newborn baby. Like, you're so exhausted caring for that baby, recovering from birth and labor and everything. And then sometimes you're lucky enough to have people show up and they go, "Oh, what can I do for you?" And you're like, I don't even know. Like,
What
it's
I
a lot more helpful though if somebody would show up and pay attention, listen to how you're doing. And when you say, oh, I'm just so tired, then they could say, oh, well, how about I can do blah, blah, blah so that you can get some rest. And that active listening, you're just able to pull out so much more than somebody in a level of distress is ever going to be able to provide to you.
Right. I love this. I think this is again the foundation for my free strategy calls that I do. And shameless plug, like literally going to drop the link here to that video over in the community where we talk about how to make a sale in your free consultation call, because the framework for that call is this quote, like literally is the 3 steps that we just
Yeah.
talked about. And it's how you take that relationship and then serve them. Again, selling is serving. So when we want people to get the benefits of the services that we provide, we have to serve them. And in order to serve them, we have to know what they want and what they need and what they feel. I have 2 leads right now. It's super funny. I have 2 leads right now that are pushing back on the monetary piece of what we do, right? They want to pay for it is really what it boils down to. But here's what I want to tell you. In every conversation that I've had with them, it is not about the money. Like the core of what they're seeking is emotional relief of this stress. And so it's funny, just know that sometimes people's words and what they say doesn't always match. And so some of our job becomes helping them go back to the things that they've already revealed to us, and again revalidating those to be able to help them come forward. And I know I feel like I just walked in a circle, but maybe you can put better words to that. Where, like I said, they've said in their story, when they tell me what they're looking for and what things, it's all about the emotional relief of getting rid of these financial medical bills. That's what it really is. And when it comes into the sales process, they balk at the price, when I know that it really is about the value. And so my job is to go back to their why they sought us out in the first place. And I can only do that if I have spent the time in the beginning to understand them.
Yeah. Another way that I can think to put that, if it's helpful, is to remind everybody as we're tying this back to our practice that humans make decisions based on emotion 100% always. And so when they're making buying decisions about our services, it's typically not that useful to focus on the deliverables, meaning like the actions or the actual services that you provide. Telling somebody, I'll sit with you at your doctor's appointment is not nearly as impactful as if they told you beforehand and you listened and took notes that they were feeling overwhelmed and overburdened. Then you've moved that forward and say, my services will take away that overwhelm and put you back at capacity so that you're not stressed out going through this process and can remain in a good headspace where you need to be in these medical whatever. It's the same exact thing when you boil it down, but one is in concrete deliverable terms, and the other one is the emotional impact of what we bring. Now, which one of those sounds much more compelling?
Right? It's the emotional one for sure.
And it's like not that, then this is not like you use the word influence, and I kind of don't like that word just because I think it has some negative connotations around it. We're not trying to influence people to do something that's not in their best interest. And this is where you're coming with, we are here to serve. Like, we know the value we bring, the difference we make. I know as a clinical advocate that literally the work that I do has the power to save lives. And it's happened before and it will continue to happen.
Yeah.
So if somebody is pushing back on a price tag because I haven't done a good enough job in explaining the full value of my services, then I owe it to them to bring
Yes.
all that value forward so that they can
Yes.
see that that is the next logical step.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where you're right. Thank you. Because I think that that is when, because we can only serve and bring the value when they let us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it really is. I love this conversation. I think that this is a place where it's really fundamental in
Mm-hmm.
kind of all of our core convictions in this community, right? It's all about selling is serving, and we can only sell if we're able to hear people and people can hear us. But people can only hear us when we listen to them first. It starts with validating and listening and doing, and it's all of the things, honestly, it's all of the things that drove us to become advocates in the first place, right? I don't know about you all, but how many, and I'm pretty sure most of us, I literally left my job in healthcare because I couldn't do this part. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was not
Yeah.
physically possible for me to do this part inside of the system. I didn't have the time, I didn't have the bandwidth, I didn't have all of the things, the resources
Mm-hmm.
that I needed. And so that's why I got into this work. And I'm willing to say that most of us are that way, right?
Yeah.
So this is where it starts. This is why we got into this work. This is why people need us to do this work. And it requires us to kind of just slow down, and take it easy, instead of pushing the gas to the floor. And, you know, when in reality, sometimes that's what I want to do. Sometimes I just want to
Mm-hmm.
like push the gas and get where I'm going. And I just have that tendency.
Gee,
So,
I'm not
um,
familiar with that feeling at all.
I know, right? I'm sure that's shocking, and nobody else is like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we've got, drop in the comments if that's you too, right? You just want to put the gas to the floor and go. All right, so we're running out of time. I think that my challenge to everyone is either drop a comment or send me a direct message or post in the community. Where can you slow down and lead with understanding this week? Right? Where in your work can you apply this? Slow down, listen, and lead with understanding this week. Um, I've got a ton of sales conversations going on right now, and I'm just going to tell you that's where I'm going to apply that this week. Is I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that all of my sales conversations are going slowly and with intentionality and leading with understanding. So that's my commitment, and I'd love to hear yours.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, Kayla, before we jump off?
Mm. I would love to challenge people to think about where they can apply this not only in their business, but also in their personal lives, because it is, as you mentioned, just so fundamental. Just pick any relationship, anyone that you wish was a little bit better, whichever one just popped first to your mind, and apply this there.
I
And
love it.
I would like bet money that it will get better.
Right? It will. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We're so grateful for you in this community and showing up with us every Monday. Next week, we'll be back, same time, same place. We're going to talk about resilience next week. So have an amazing week. We'll be watching to see where you're applying this and can't wait to hear the good things. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.